I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. I'm Bob Darrell. I'm an alcoholic. And I hail from the hitting bottom capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. And if helping drunks is your primary purpose, it's a target-rich environment. Delighted to be here. I am a member in good standing of the Connect the Dots group in Las Vegas. And more importantly than me saying that, if you were to go to any of our meetings, you could ask any of the members there, and they know by my actions and my commitments there, jobs I have, that I'm a member of that group. And that's the most important thing is that I look like a member. I also have a sponsor. I just spent part of last weekend with him and talked to him on the phone Thursday, and he knows he's my sponsor by my actions. And let me tell you something. If your sponsor doesn't know they're your sponsor, they're not. They're just not. I know we all want the bragging rights of a good AA member without actually having to do anything, but it doesn't work out in the long run. And I have a sobriety date, which is the date from that date to this, I've had no alcohol or other mind or emotional medications, and that's October 31st, 1978. It's odd that if my sobriety date, the day I got sober, was anything like the day you got sober, it felt like the absolute worst day of my life. And if you would have told me that you're going to throw parties and celebrate that day the rest of your life, I'd have thought you were crazy. And yet it became the most important day of my life. The day that my life turned towards the light, towards a life that has been significant. Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you realize why. And we have a purpose here there's nothing greater than a useful and purposeful life. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here with my friend Jeff, who is a bright light in Alcoholics Anonymous and a great sense of humor. And this will be fun. It's the first time we've done this together, and Jeff's afraid it'll be the last, but we don't know. I know there's a lot of new people here. Just curious, how many people in their first year of absolute abstinence? Wow. Delighted you're here. Anybody here in the first 30 days? Couple? Well, all right. Welcome, man. Glad you're here. Very cool. Anybody that's just kind of fed up with it all and they're in their last 30 days, so they know it? Yeah. Okay. Just checking. And if you are, I wouldn't admit it either, because you'll just get gang 12-stepped here. It'd be bad. It'd be horrible. I'll tell you, I get up here, I get asked to do this a lot, which sometimes baffles me. I'm not an expert on this by any means. If I was an expert on anything, it would be my own failure, drunk and sober. But what I am is a guy who in 1978, after a failed suicide attempt, after 11 places of recuperation, detoxes and halfway, 11 times in treatment, and failing and making up my mind over and over again, I'm never going to touch any of that stuff again. I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous the last time and was very fortunate. I had just enough of me kicked out of me that I could hear you. And it was a very, very painful place to be. But it is the place that was necessary, this place of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. My ego had to be crushed because I'm the I know it guy. I know everything. Can't tell me nothing. And it had to be crushed so I could hear you. I got a sponsor and the journey began. What Cody read at the beginning of the meeting is a very crucial part of the big book, which a lot of the books like that to me. But it talks about step one there in a way that's different. In the rooms on the wall, it says, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. I did that for years, and it meant nothing. Because you put me in a group setting, you put me in a treatment center, you put me in an AA meeting where people are looking at me, and I'll admit I'm anything because I don't want any problems. I don't want any problems. Back off. But I fully concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. I wasn't even in the same zip code as that. I was so far from that. When I said I was an alcoholic, what I was really saying is I got a lot of problems. Probably drugs are worse, and the police are worse, and alcohol is somewhere in the mix, I suppose. And just back off and don't give me any problems. And I just leave me alone. And yeah, I'm an alcoholic, is what I was really saying. And I was very confused. And I was very confused because I went to a lot of treatment centers, and there's a question that they ask you when you check in. Most treatment centers, they'll ask you, what's your drug of choice? And it's a hard question because the real answer is, what do you got? I broke open a magic marker and huffed it one time in jail, just hoping something would happen. I drank vanilla extract. I ate a can of nutmeg one time. I would go through I got down, I ruined my parents' liquor cabinet. Everything was watered down except the Galliano. If you've ever drank Galliano when you're sick, it's bad. So they shouldn't ask you that question because it's a meaningless question. They should take you guys like me through the doctor's opinion. Help me to find my alcoholism, because so many of us, by the time we get to AA, we have a whole plethora of problems. I had family problems. I had guilt and shame problems. I had emotional problems. I had mental problems. I was clinically depressed. I was diagnosed that twice. I was diagnosed as free-floating anxiety and panic disorder once. So I got problems with fear. I got problems with depression. I got problems with employment. I got problems with money. I got problems with God. I got problems with sex. I got problems with girls. I got problems with friends that are no longer friends. I got problems keeping a job. Yeah, and I have problems with alcohol. But if you find your alcoholism, you'll find the source of everything else. And it doesn't look that way. If you would have told me that my alcoholism was the cause of my depression, my anxiety, my angst, my broken relationships, my family problems, my inability to keep a job for any length of time, my mental problems, and I had some mental problems. If someone could have surgically implanted a microphone into my brain and hooked it up to loudspeakers and everybody could hear what I was thinking, you would be horrified. You would hear the voice of Legion. It was bad, man. It was bad. It was crazy. You can't tell people that stuff. Just crazy thoughts. I don't act on most of them, thank God. I could be sitting in a psychiatrist's office and just trying to talk about my feelings, and the thought would just go through my mind, stick that pen in his eye. Right. We're not going to do it, but it's just weird thoughts go through my head. Oh, God. And yet I have alcoholism. And here's what Dr. Silkworth says. He worked in a treatment center, a hospital, Towns Hospital, and he also worked in Knickerbocker Hospital for a while. And he dealt with people with drug addiction and alcoholism. And he discovered that there was a type of person who has a terminal illness. And it seems to be independent of drug of choice. And he looked for a litmus test. How do you discover these chronic alcoholics as opposed to a problem drinker who has a problem with alcohol, terrible problem, but puts the plug in the jug and they're good to go, or the person who has become horridly addicted to an addictive substance They didn't have crack cocaine back then, but they had heroin, they had morphine, and it has a terrible problem. How do you tell? And then there's these people who they relapse themselves to death, and they switch substances from time to time. Dr. Bob was a great example. Dr. Bob did 20 times as much drugs as he ever drank. According to his own story, he took high-powered sedatives, barbiturates, every day of his life for 17 years and only drank periodically. But he wasn't a drug addict. He had something more hideous than that. He had a thing called alcoholism. And Dr. Silkworth says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average tempered drinker. And later on, he says that this phenomenon of craving is what differentiates us, chronic alcoholics, as a distinct entity, separate and apart from everybody else. And what is this phenomenon of craving? He said that the allergy manifests itself in this phenomenon of craving. Well, I'm sitting in treatment centers. My first exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was in a treatment center for the exclusive treatment of heroin addiction. You could have put me on a lie detector and said, Bob, is there any way you're an alcoholic? I just said no, and it was telling the truth. And it would have said I was telling the truth. But I was an alcoholic. And I first got sent away when I was 16 solely for the results of things that happened through drinking alcohol solely. And I discovered something some of you may have discovered. If you do enough drugs, you can get away from alcohol for a while. But I had alcoholism even though I didn't believe it. When it says that most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics, oh my God. It's crazy how the mental gyrations I will go through just because I don't want to be an alcoholic. I had some uncles who were alcoholic. They were pathetic. I don't want to be an alcoholic. Now, I'll be a drug addict. There's a little panache. There's a little coolness in that. I mean, there was rock stars that were professed drug addicts. I mean, I could do that. I'll be a mental health case because if you're a mental health case, you get pills and sympathy. I like both of those. But I don't want to be an alcoholic. And Silkworth says that what makes you an alcoholic, Bob, is this allergic reaction to alcohol that manifests in a phenomenon of craving. I remember sitting in meetings and hearing people talk about that. I don't have that. And even after I'd burn out the drug scene, I came back to just nothing in the last several years except alcohol. Even then, when the evidence is mounting and piling up and it's becoming overwhelming that I'm alcoholic, I resist it. I resist that, accepting that. And I was sitting in a meeting in the mid-70s when some woman was sharing her experience, and I found myself in you in a way that I could never find myself in through psychiatrists or psychologists. Found myself in you. And she's sharing her experience after being sober a little while and going to a dinner party and having a glass of wine, and then what happened to her when she had that glass of wine. And a light came on as I remembered a rare instance where a similar thing happened to me. The funny thing about a craving is you don't realize you have it until you can't satisfy it. Everyone in this room at this moment is in the grip of a craving you're not aware of, and that's the craving to breathe air. But if the guy behind you were to put a plastic bag over your head, you'd instantly realize you have a craving to breathe air because you can't satisfy it. And so I avoided situations where I could only have a couple and couldn't get any more. Not because I think I'm alcoholic, it just seems stupid to me. Why would you do that? And I remembered an incident that happened when I was 18 years old. Now, when I was 18 years old, I was in the middle of my, the banner I marched under was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. At least two of those, and hopeful for the third. And we can say we were heads. We're not, we looked down on juicers, right? And I was dating this girl, and it was in a period where I'd cleaned up and got off everything. I was doing nothing. I was being good. I used to have periods. I'm sure I'm the only one in the room who's ever periods where you be good, being good. And then I just outgood myself. It's like every time, well, the harder I try to be good, it like puts torque on my bad. You know what I mean? It's a funny deal. And I'm being good, and she invites me over to her parents' house. She wants me to meet her family. And I go, yeah. There's an awkwardness about that, but I go. And I sit down at the dinner table, and they bring out a little bottle of wine. This is not the kind of bottle of wine that any of us would have bought. This was a little wimpy, Al-Anon-ish kind of bottle of wine. You know, I was like, this is like a stupid bottle of wine. It was something like Blue Nun with like 11% alcohol. What a waste. I like wine that's never seen a grape. You know what I mean? I like wine that if you read the ingredients, it says grape flavoring and neutral grain spirits. You know, it's like the Everclear with flavoring. That's the kind of wine I like. It's 20%. Take you downtown now. I like that kind of wine. But I'm not drinking at this point. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. And they bring this bottle of wine out and pour me a glass. I drink quickly. I don't know. I've often wondered if evaporation is not a childhood issue with me or something. I drink quickly. Because I drink quickly, I've killed 2 glasses out of that bottle of wine. The bottle's dead, and they're still sipping on the first glass. And I'm sitting there, my glass is dead, bottle's dead, and I got 2 glasses of wine in me, and I'm getting a little antsy. The conversation at the dinner table that earlier had been okay is starting to become stupid and tedious. But I don't say anything because I'm a nice guy. And I blurted out, I said, God, that was good wine. Do you have any more? And they said, no. And went back to talking about the end of the Vietnam and sports and all this and movies and crap. And I'm sitting there and I feel like I'm losing my mind. I blurted out, I said, I like beer. And they said, well, we don't have any beer, Bob. And they went back to talking, and I don't know what the hell to do. I'm like getting nuts here. And I excused myself. I went into their bathroom. I locked the door, and like a madman, I went through the cabinets. And I found this unopened bottle of cough medicine that was 35% alcohol with codeine and terpenhydrate, which is really a great bonus. And I sat on the edge of that bathtub, and I chugged that bottle of cough medicine like a desperate guy. And all that spit into my head just went, ah. And I was able to focus and think straight. I got just enough of me up off of me to not be so insane. And I went back to that dinner table with a story about something I forgot to take care of. I was so sorry to leave. I went out, got in my car in front of their house and drove down their block 20 or 25 miles an hour, turned the corner and drove like an insane maniac to get to my friend Brett's house. Because Brett had he just got some Thai stick and he had an open bar in his basement. And those 2 glasses of wine lit something up inside of me and that only happens in people with alcoholism, regardless of the fantasy of what you think your problem is. If you have that, you pass the litmus test for alcoholism, and that means that your problem is much, much worse than the abuse of a substance. Much worse. And there's never been an alcoholic that I've ever heard of that could safely use drugs. But there's been thousands and thousands of drug addicts that's their problem and they can drink. We saw that at the end of the Vietnam War. We saw thousands of people coming back from Southeast Asia with heroin addictions like my friend Grady. My friend Grady was you could get like an ounce of almost pure heroin in Vietnam for just dollars, nothing. And he had such an unbelievable addiction. But Grady got detoxed by the VA, had some post-traumatic stress disorder counseling. And to this day, Grady has the luxury of going out and having 2 beers It doesn't set him off. It doesn't compel him to go buy heroin or to drink to oblivion. He doesn't have the allergy to alcohol. And consequently, Grady's problem was within a substance. But if you are a chronic alcoholic, your problem is not within a substance. It's within me. It's in here. It is who I am. It is my nature. An alcoholic by nature will go through a 6-month supply of anything good in about 2 weeks. We are the more people. What do you want? More. I don't know. I just want. We're the wanters. We're the people. I think Goldilocks and the Three Bears we can't. The porridge is too hot. It's too cold. The bed's too hard. It's too soft. It's just nothing's quite right. Because not only do I have this allergy to alcohol, I have this malady of my being. And one of the things that almost killed me is I didn't understand that my alcoholism, for all practical and deadly purposes, starts where the bag and the bottle ends. Alcoholism will run right up into sobriety with you, and it can kill you here. As I've seen dozens of people who knew they can't drink, and they will not drink, and they drew a tough line in the sand, they will not drink, and then at 43 and a half years, and 23 years, and 12 years, and 10 years, and it happens a lot, they take their own life. Because you get to a point where you have to escape you, and you can't. And drinking's not an option. Or they drink again. How many people, you stay around AA for a while, you'll see thousands of cases of some great, really good people, men and women, who have had various periods of sobriety. And just about the time you think, man, this guy's doing so good, they'll pick up a drink and burn their life to the ground again. And I did that time and time again. And I didn't know what was killing me. I had no understanding. Why am I I thought when I finally got to the place where I knew I had that reaction where I can't drink, because if I drink, it starts that thing. When I got that, I thought I was out of the woods. I thought that knowledge, coupled with, a real sincere desire to never pick up the first one, I thought that I was free. Because my ego always fancies that it will find power in knowledge. But there is no power in knowledge. I got certified and ended up working in the field as a counselor and had all kinds of certifications in RET and various things, because I thought that I would find the power to get a different result out of the world if I had enough knowledge. And if knowledge is anything to a person like me, it seems to be fodder for the ego. It puffs me up into a false and smug sense of intellectual superiority. I'm the I know guy. And that's a bad deal. So what I discovered is I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol and other chemicals, but alcohol is the main deal. But what I don't know is that I have an abnormal reaction to abstinence, and that's what kills the chronic alcoholic. Silkworth says it best. He said that when guys like me get sober, and if you're like me, you're getting sober with good intentions. You're getting sober with a conviction that you're never, ever, ever going to drink again, and you mean it with everything in you. And then Silkworth starts to talk about what happens to a guy like me after I'm physically sober for a while. He said that I become restless. And we all know what that is. It's a vague thing. It's not big restless like where you're running down the street with your hair on fire. It's a low-level restless, which is worse because it's subtle and it's vague and you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's just a sense of wherever you are, it's not where you need to be. Now, I don't know where I need to be, but I just have a feeling like it's not here. I'm restless. I can't get settled anywhere. And then the second symptom, he said, this malady, this spiritual malady, is irritability. That I'm restless, I'm irritable. Well, I'm not irritable. I am not irritable. Irritable people irritate me. I am not irritable. But what I am is I have this gift that when I get sober, I can just so easily see how stupid everybody is. It's a gift, I guess. I don't know. I see stupid people everywhere. And they rub me the wrong way. And because I'm restless, I have to tell them how they're stupid, which makes abstinence a lonely business at times. And I'm chronically malcontent. And what that means is there's something, and I kept this in the shade for a long time, this depressiveness that comes from chronic dissatisfaction. You know, I've been diagnosed as, my depression comes in two forms. Either I worry so much about stuff and problems that haven't even occurred yet that I angst up over things I can do absolutely nothing about, and then I implode into a deep depression. Or it's just an increasing awareness of how bland and nothing my life is. Nothing. And it's independent of my material possessions. It's independent of my job. It's independent of people loving me. But I got this thing wrong with me. It's my very core of the shine of stuff wears off very, very quickly for me. I'm the guy that can meet the girl that I am absolutely convinced is my soulmate. I think, my God, with her, I'd be sober the rest of my life. I mean, she's such a good wall. She's gorgeous. God, if I was really intimate with her, I think pigeons would fly out my ears. I mean, oh my God, she's amazing. And I'm convinced of that. And I bring her into my life as if this somehow is going to be the missing piece. And then almost immediately, it starts to pale. And the shine starts to wear off of her and this relationship. And until I don't just go to this isn't as amazing as I thought it was. I go to resenting her because somewhere unconsciously I expected her to fill my vacancies. I expected her to make a difference. I expected with her I would be somewhat happy and satisfied. The problem is I'm with her and she loves me and I'm still me. And that ain't no good. Get that job. A friend of mine had got this job at J&L Steel. I mean, this is when the steel companies were rocking and rolling in Pennsylvania. I'll tell you, and big money. You don't even have to have a high school education. You can get a job that you can buy a house, have a Harley, own a boat kind of money. Big money. And I don't know about you, but I knew, man, if I had that job in that steel mill, sure, I'd be there. I'd be there. Get anything I want. Be the guy. I'd be the guy. And I got that job. I wasn't even there 3-4 weeks, and the people there are stupid, and they're taking advantage of me, and it's a stupid job, you know, and I'm leaving, restless, irritable, and discontented, unless Sokor says, unless I can again experience that sense of ease and comfort, which used to come from taking a few drinks. But something terrible has happened to me in the progression of this disease. I've progressed to a point where alcohol no longer does that amazing thing for me, and it only does that horrible thing to me. But after 6 months in a treatment center, I will start ignoring reality and imagining that it can do that amazing thing for me again when the actual truth of my experience is it hasn't done that in a long time. And I can't jumpstart the party. But this spiritual malady, this thing inside of me that drives me, it also uses my own mind against me. Dr. Silkworth says that after a time, we can't differentiate the true from the false. The last 3 years of my drinking, I had various periods of sobriety in treatment centers and halfway houses. And after any period of sobriety, when I would go to get high again, the best part of it was the hour before it started. And then it would start, and it's the pathetic thing again. It ain't like it was when I was 18 years old and I was playing in a band and talking to the girls and I'm laughing and I'm free. I don't get free no more at the end. And yet you get me 6 months sober and I'll bet my life that I can get free again, even though my reality is I can't. And you don't know that till you start and you find yourself sinking into oblivion, depressed. I drink in depression. I stop bathing. There's a loneliness that is on me that's just pathetic. And this is not a party. This is the fabric of a lost soul. This is the place you get to where guys like me start thinking about killing themselves. Because getting high is awful and I can't imagine life like this. And I can't roll it back, and I know it. Because I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. And yet I can't imagine life without it either, because abstinence feels like I'm doing time. I can bear up with it for a while, but eventually everything in me is screaming for relief. And here's the crazy part. Usually, that happens when my external life is better than it's ever been. I got the nice place to live. I got the car. I got the girlfriend. Everybody who's watching me is saying things like, man, that Bob's turned a corner. He's doing good. But internally, where I really live and where my life is truly unmanageable, it's not out here, it's in here, is where I can't manage my own life. In here, I'm so tired of me. I'm so tired of fighting the low-level depression and the loneliness and watching and the disillusionment of as everything I bring into my life that I'm excited about pales and turns to crap and is nothing. And I drink again. And I drink again because I don't know what else to do. And alcohol has stopped being a medicine for alcoholism, but I don't have anything else. Some of you might be sitting there and say, what do you mean, Bob? What about AA? If you've ever sat in the middle of you suffering from alcoholism and problems everywhere you look, Wilson says it's like quicksands reaching out to the horizon, problems everywhere, and then looked at the 12 steps. The 12 steps don't look like a solution for that. And the funny thing about that, the 12 steps, is no alcoholic knows that they work until after they've not only done them, but helped other people to do them. AA doesn't look like a solution until you do it. I've never met one guy yet that came in AA in the middle of the despair and hopelessness of burning his life to the ground again and looked at the 12 steps and went, oh yeah, that would work. Absolutely. Nobody says that. You know, I mean, I need a set of steps like step 1, make Bob's police record disappear. You know, step 2, bring her back properly ashamed of herself. Give me the step that makes my parents realize how wrong they've been. Give me anything just to make a difference. But I'm stuck up in me and I can't change it. And that's called alcoholism. And alcoholics drink again, and then some of us try to take our own lives, as I did in 1978. Jeff, take me off the hook.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Van Lanningham, and I'm an alcoholic. I am delighted to be here. Oh, my sobriety date, because of God, actions taken in a very good sponsorship, is March 16th, 1992. And I want to thank the committee for asking me to be a part of this. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and it's certainly interesting circumstances. It'll come out. I think you'll be able to tell as I share today. So I'll just tell you right now, Bob is my sponsor. And so Bob was able to fly into Fargo, where I'm from, and then he and I drove over, which was really cool for me because I've never had an opportunity to just be alone in a car with Bob, which was fantastic. For those of you who were taking bets, it was just past Jamestown when Bob fell asleep. So, which is a lot further than I thought he would make it. Because we just got in the car like, Bob, I've been thinking, and off we went. So all of my good ideas were aired out yesterday, and I seem to be back on track. So I'm anyway, but I am very happy to be here, and I want to welcome. Well, certainly I want to welcome all of you, but in particular I want to welcome those of you who raised your hands for 30 days or under, and God bless you for coming out on a Saturday in July to a big book workshop. I don't know that I would have done that when I was under 30 days sober, but I'm glad you're here. And, there may be some of you who are wondering, what's the big deal about the big book? Why do we spend a day doing a boot camp about it? The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was published in 1939. Don't we have anything newer? We seem to be a little slow to keep our literature rolling. And I've got a sister who she just got out of a treatment center yesterday, and she flew into town, and her and I were chatting, and she's got a plethora of books that she's reading, none of which are the big book, but they're interesting, they're sexy, and they're new, and somebody's making a lot of money on them, I'm sure, and I'm not faulting that. I think it's good to read. I think it's good to, but the thing about the big book is it's the only one who actually produces roomfuls of sober alcoholics. And the rest of them are perhaps good information, perhaps good experience, but there's something about this book. And that's why for the first 164 pages have never changed. They've never changed because we don't need to improve upon it. It works. The problem with that, and I'm going to say something that you probably should not say at a big book boot camp, certainly not at the beginning, but the big book can be dull, right? I mean, when I'm new, I'm like, wow, I can't go to sleep. I'm riveting. I gotta get into action and see what comes next. That's not the way that I approach the book, and it can be a little dry, right? But the problem is that what needs to happen for me is that I don't need to study the book. Here's what I do. Here's how I approach the big book. I study it so that I can quote it at a meeting to be right and impress people. No intention of doing it, but I do want you to know that on page 86, that's where the 11th step inventory is. I'm not doing the 11th step inventory, but I can certainly let you know where it is. And so what I need to do is be able to find myself in the book. That's really my goal. Now, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I won't bore you with a big history lesson, but I do think it's important to understand why it's laid out the way it's laid out and what went into it. It says on our cover, it's the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous. So let's operate under the premise that this is a textbook. And like any good textbook, they're not going to throw you into calculus on chapter 1. We're going to ease into things. We're going to learn numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, eventually algebra, and so on and so forth. It's the same thing with the big book. The big book, you have the doctor's opinion. Now, the doctor's opinion, which is Dr. Silkworth and Bob was referencing, was originally page 1 on the first edition. Now, somewhere along the lines, somebody, I don't know who, and smarter minds than me perhaps, decided that Dr. Silkworth, because he was not an alcoholic, that hence should not be part of the actual text. That's why they changed it to the Roman numerals, which, on a side note, I'm horrible at reading Roman numerals, so it's really hard for me to reference those pages. But anyway, so we have the Roman numeral portion of the doctor's opinion. After which time, and the doctor's opinion is going to, in my opinion, very clearly state what's wrong with me. That's important because I've been on a journey to try and find out what's wrong with me for a long time. I have known that there's something off about me since I was a little kid. I have known there's something missing, there's something wrong. I've just never known what it is. And when somebody started to suggest that I might be alcoholic, I thought, no, that's not it. I realize I drink bizarrely. I get that. But there's something underneath. There's something underneath. There's this hole in my soul that I don't know what to do about it. And it drives me. And alcohol seems to be the only thing that provides me a little bit of relief. Alcohol is really the only thing I'd ever found that was somewhat of a solution. A bad solution, yes. But it was the only thing I'd ever found that seemed to make me okay for a little while. So Silkworth is going to describe, I think, in masterful detail what's wrong with me. There's the medical opinion. There's exactly what alcoholism is. But this isn't a program about learning information. We need to identify. So Bill's story is next. Bill Wilson's story is there for identification purposes. I've learned what alcoholism is. Now I have Bill's story. And when I read Bill's story, I start to identify. I start to look at some of the things that I don't identify with the specifics, of course. I'm not a stockbroker in the Depression in New York City. But I do understand Bill's thinking. I do understand Bill's need. I've arrived. I do understand Bill's pursuit of wealth because he thinks that he'll be okay. I do understand Bill's drinking and how it baffles him, his utter inability to control it, and how it's getting out of hand. And he keeps going back to the hot stove, putting his hand on it, wondering if he'll get burnt again. I get all of that. So by the time I'm done with Bill's story, if I've gone through properly, I am starting to consider the possibility that I may be an alcoholic. Then they give me the next chapter. There is a solution. Ultimately, spoiler alert, the solution is going to be God or a power greater than yourself. And it's like Bill knew alcoholics aren't going to like this. I literally envision it, reading it. It's like, yeah, Silkworth seems to get me. I identify with Bill. Oh, good, there is a solution. Thank God, I'm not hopeless. Well, the solution is God. I have a real problem with that. So I don't know that we can continue because I don't know that that's the kind of solution I'm looking for. They knew that. The next chapter is more about alcoholism. Yeah, we know you don't like the solution. Here's more information on how screwed you are and to back this up. And so I read that, hopefully being brought to a point of a little bit of open-mindedness, at least enough to try and proceed forward. But I am all screwed up with God. I am all screwed up with God, and that's a sensitive subject. And that's why We Agnostics is the next chapter. And We Agnostics is not meant to explain God. We Agnostics is meant to clear away my prejudices, my closed-mindedness that will prevent me from going on. And hopefully it will do that. And if I can get to that point at the end of chapter 4, now we're finally where we want to be. How does it work? How does this thing work? That's how my mind works, by the way. If I look at something, sometimes books will have little cliff note bullet points at the end of a chapter. I've literally read an entire book by just reading that page of each chapter. That's what I like to do. Go to the condensed, don't eat all the fluff. Just let's get down to the basics. And how it works, of course, is going to steer me in that direction. We're going to cover off on steps 3 and steps 4. And then we're going to go into action where we cover off on steps 5 through 11. And then lastly, we're going to get into chapter 7 where it talks about into action. And then there's some other chapters that I think, of course, are important. But in a nutshell, that's what's really going on in the book. So the goal, of course, like I said, is for me to be able to find myself in this book. I have to find a way to identify an Alcoholics Anonymous. If I don't, Alcoholics Anonymous becomes one of any 100 organizations that I've been around or in. A nice program for people who need that. But if I'm not an alcoholic, which I was convinced that I was not for a long time, if I'm not an alcoholic, why would I go to Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah, I would go to get the heat off. I would go, but why would I stay? Why would I throw myself into this? So what I wanted to do, and by the way, I should mention, so Bob, as he alluded to, he and I have never done this. And you might think, oh, well, two crackpot alcoholics, we have all this time in the car yesterday. Obviously, we're going to put together a detailed plan on how we're going to do this book study. Didn't even come up at all. The only conversation that we have had was Bob came up to me this morning and he goes, I don't think we should do all 12 steps. I said, Bob, I've been waiting for you to tell me that for 25 years. Whew. Can we cut meetings out too? And he said, I think we want to slow it down, and we may not get through all 12 steps. So we're going to slow it down a little bit, and that's the extent of our plan. So how could anything go wrong with that detailed plan? But what I want to do is cover off on a paragraph that's near and dear to my heart. In the doctor's opinion, there's two letters. Silkworth wrote a first one, and then they asked him for a second one, and he wrote a second one. And on that, and I don't know if the Roman numerals have changed in the different editions. It's, good God, I don't know what it's. I don't know if this is 30. I don't know what the hell this is. It's XXV1. What is that? 26? Is that what it is in fourth edition? Too? Is it 26? Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about. How would you know if it's that page? The last paragraph should say men and women drink essentially. I'm looking for that page. XXIV. They put an I in there? Lovely. Okay. Well, anyway, find the page where at the last paragraph it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I didn't realize. What? We got it? Okay, so they added a couple I's. Seems appropriate. Are we all on that page? All right. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I did not realize not everyone gets the same effect from alcohol that I get. That's why I was always so baffled when I was out drinking and I would watch these people drink. In fact, let me just continue on. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. I watch people drink differently than me, and I could never understand it. I just assumed they didn't have the problems that I had because I'm a type of person that what I bring to the table as myself, actually I'm going to read the next line, then I'm going to quit. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. I am restless, irritable, and discontented. Anything I've ever had go wrong in my life can be traced back to restless, irritable, and discontent. I don't get that way drunk. I get that way sober. The longer I'm away from alcohol, the longer I am away from the only solution at that time I have, the more restless, irritable, and discontent I become. And I don't even know that it's happening. It just seems normal to me. I'm restless. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need, but I know it's not this. I need to make a change. I need to move. I need to get into a new career. I need to find a her. I need to get rid of this her. I need to move away. I need to whatever. I need to change my personality. There's a restlessness about me that it's an itch I can't scratch, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm irritable. I'm always kind of on edge, and I have these growing feelings of self-pity. I remember when someone explained to me that, I had a lot of self-pity, and I thought, I don't know, I'm not sitting around crying all the time. But that's not really what self-pity is. Self-pity is a deep-seated belief that my life is harder than everyone else. Yeah, I've got that. That would be my flag of my life if I had one. And also, by the way, I know it to be true. And I'm discontented. I'm discontented, and Bob talked about this, in that everything loses its shine for me. If you mapped out my life and you look at all the paths that I've been on, they all end with the same road sign that says dead end. This isn't it either. I thought it was. I thought I'd finally figured it out. I thought this group of people, this job, this persona, this car, this wardrobe, this whatever, I thought that was it, and it's not. And I'm going to have to try something else. I'm going to have to find something else. And that's how I feel. That's how when my spirit is sick, that's how I feel. And I eventually will go back to the one thing that seems to alleviate those symptoms, a sense of ease and comfort. And is there any better way to describe the effect of alcohol than ease and comfort? because my life is the exact opposite, hard and uncomfortable. And I'm tired of that. I want that sense of ease and comfort, right? That comes at once by taking a few drinks. Magical experience. And for a little while, I sit on top of the world and I watch, as my drinking starts to get out of hand, I watch other people. They don't seem to have the same problem. They don't seem to have the same types of obsessions that I have. I mean, for example, there's two things in a room, any party I've ever been at, there's always two things I'm acutely aware of where they are: my drink and her, whoever she happens to be, right? I always know where those two things are. And I watch other people, they don't seem to act like this. Have you ever watched someone, they're drinking whatever they're drinking here, right? And they set it down, like, let's go check out the pool, right? And they take off and leave their drink behind. My God, what the hell is the matter with you? Aren't you going to take this? I mean, right? I am always, if we're at a keg party and this podium is the keg, one of these two seats is acceptable, but that's it. I'm not certainly going to be off in the corner catching up with someone. I'm going to be around the source. I'm going to be around the well, of the solution. And I don't see other people drinking like that, so I don't know what's wrong with me. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, which is my physical allergy to alcohol, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again, right? I go out, I got drunker than I expected to get. I can't believe I let it happen again. Here I am. Where am I? Where's my car? Who is this next to me? All the questions that go through our mind. And I always walk away with, okay, that's it. That is it. That will never happen to me again. I'm over remorseful, I'm hopeless, and I don't know how to get off this wheel. This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. And again, I don't like the idea of psychic change which by the way is a doctor's way of saying spiritual awakening. I don't like the idea of psychic change, spiritual awakening. I don't like anything that doesn't put the solution squarely in my hands. And this is a problem. And ultimately, I'm going to die from this if I don't find a way. So that is ultimately, in a nutshell, what's wrong with me. And I have to find a way to identify an Alcoholics Anonymous I believe, for it to work. I think there's ultimately three basic tenets of recovery that I need to get out of this book. The first of which is identification, the idea that this is what's wrong with me, an understanding of the problem. The second is what is the solution? And the third is how to find that solution. And that's what my journey becomes. Understanding who and what I am, understanding what the solution is, and then lastly, how to carve enough of me out of the way so that I can allow this. Because the good news is the solution's inside of you. You don't have to go looking for it. It's there. It's just covered up with some things. And I've got to find a way to get rid of enough of me so that the power, if you will, can start to work in my life. So do you want to break now and then we can hit one a little, or do you want me to? How's everybody doing? We're already over time and way, but.
Well, almost 40.
Okay. Then I'm going to continue on a little bit here. So that's alcoholism. And if you're here this morning, as I alluded to, on a hot, beautiful Saturday in July, you probably have some inclination that you might be alcoholic. So, of course, then we start to get into the steps. Now, step one, as Bob said, the way that it's worded on what you see on the wall, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable, is not the way that they worded in the actual book. Not until chapter 5 do they say that. In here, we're going to be on chapter 3, page 30. Now we're getting into my wheelhouse. I know numbers. And on chapter 3, and I think this was read this morning before we started, but I'm going to cover it again. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Look at that powerful statements in there. I love this so much. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking. Isn't that really what we're after? All those mornings when I woke up remorseful with a firm resolution not to let that happen again, what comes about? That's a Sunday morning when I'm making that pledge. But by Tuesday, my alcoholic mind has shaken itself awake again. And I start thinking, actually, I mean, total abstinence is a really overreaction. And I don't want to be that guy. The real problem is this. The real problem is that I was drinking whiskey, and I know better than to drink whiskey. The real problem is the people I was drinking with. One of those guys had been to prison. I know better than to drink with people who had been to prison. My God, they're a bad influence on me. And all of these different things that lead me back to a drink, but with the hope of this time it will be different. And what do I mean by that? I've never aspired to social drink. That's never been a goal of mine. I want to control it and enjoy it. And I can seemingly do one or the other, but I can never do both. For me to enjoy my drinking, it means we're getting drunk. We're getting ripped, right? We don't need the cap. Take it off, toss it. Don't need that, right? Popping it straight off the bottle. And on rare occasions, I was able to control it and hated it. Couldn't fathom why anyone would really want to drink one beer. And God, if you're going to tell me taste, I don't want to hear it at all, right? I sometimes have people, I really like the taste of beer. I find it to be relaxing. Really? You like the taste of beer? Let me tell you something. My first 15 years, I was probably addicted to Diet Pepsi. Loved Diet Pepsi. You want to know how many times I went out and drank 24 Diet Pepsis in one night? Never. Never. One night crazy, I drank 4 at Applebee's and felt kind of sick, but I never bought a case of Diet Pepsi. When I'm at the party, I'm good. And I never drank for the taste. That is something I tell myself. I drink for the effect. And I need to find a way to control and enjoy my drinking. And the persistence of this illusion, it's an illusion, it's not real, is so strong that I will pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. And isn't that really where our roads end up? I remember a guy telling me way early on, first go around with some counselor, I don't know. But I remember him telling me that if I continued to drink the way that I was drinking, I was going to end up insane, dead, or in prison. Those were my options. This was, by the way, what I said to him. I don't want to go to prison, right? So we took that one off the table. The other two seemed like viable options apparently to me, but I didn't want to go to prison because that would be embarrassing. And so that's what I have. Next paragraph is where we see step 1. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. So a couple of interesting things here. I love the wording. We learned we had to fully concede. If you and I are in an argument and I concede a point to you, I give up. I am wrong, you were right. I give up. And so I have to concede, but it's interesting to who they talk about. Sometimes I hear people say, and I'm not knocking anyone, but it's not my experience. Sometimes I hear people say, when I walked into an AA meeting and I introduced myself as an alcoholic, that was step 1 for me. Whew, that would be nice. But here's my problem with that. I will say whatever I need to fit in and have no meaning, nor merit, nor believe it at all. But I can promise you that if I'm in a circle of people and everybody is introducing themselves as necrophiliacs and into bestiality, that's how I will introduce myself, just to fit in, right? Yeah, I'm down with that too. Because I so desperately want to be accepted. Doesn't mean I am, doesn't mean I've conceded to my innermost self, doesn't mean any of that. It's me. It's me I have to concede this to. It's the guy that's looking back at me in the mirror. It's not a counselor. It's not my wife. It's not my children. It's me. I kept a journal when I was drinking, and I would only write in it when I was drunk. And it was just Diary of a Madman. And I would, but it was all these goofy entries and stuff. But for the last entry says, I finally, after all this time, have come to understand what my problem is. My name is Jeff, and I am an alcoholic. End of story. I've never written in that journal again. I've never had to. I know what's the matter with me, and no matter where I go or what I do, I cannot escape that truth. I have conceded to my innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic. And then it goes on to say, and again, I love this word, the delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. And I love the word delusion. And I think it's important to note the distinction because oftentimes you hear in recovery, you hear the word denial. Sometimes you get cute and hear denial is not just a river in Egypt or wherever it is, but you hear the word denial. You're in denial about something. Denial indicates that I know the truth and I'm pretending it's not there. I'm in denial. I know I'm really an alcoholic, but I'm pretending I'm not. I don't suffer from denial. I suffer from delusion. I buy the lie. I genuinely believe I am not an alcoholic. There's no denial here. At the very core and fabric of my being, I believe this to be true. And that's what I have to overcome. That's what I have to get past is this delusion. And I'll tell you, many a times going forward beyond just step one, my problems arise from delusions, not denial, delusions. Things I falsely believe about myself, about my illness, about my God, about the people around me, but I genuinely believe them to my core. It's why it's so important that I be surrounded and immersed in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I have a sponsor that I'm current with and transparent with so that he can hear. Because I can come up with some pretty outlandish ideas and justify them in my head. So anyway, with that, I think I'm probably wrapped up on time, so I'm going to stop right there. I guess we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll start at 10:15. Sound good? 10:15. Thanks.